there, folks. Welcome to the channel. On today's episode of Beyond the Recipe, we are going to be tackling a topic that has long divided the sausage making community. When should you add spices to your meat? Should you add them before you grind? Should you add them after you grind? Who knows? Today, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Those who tend to lean towards the spice before you grind technique, add your spices and your meat together and then grind it all at once, generally say that you get better spice distribution, leading to a more flavorful sausage. And that makes sense. But is it true? Today we're going to find out. Now, those who tend to lean on the other side, the add your spices after you grind, we'll generally say that when you mix your spices and your meat together and you grind it, it's taxing on the grinder and it's not worth the extra effort. Which one is right? We're going to get to the bottom of it today as we're going to make our Polish kielbasa, an amazing sausage, one of my all-time favorites. You can find the recipe for this kielbasa in the description box below if you guys want to make it at home. Let's get started. All right, let's have a little fun today. We are going to get to the bottom of this mystery while we prepare our pork. I'm going to be using a typical 70-30 pork to fat ratio for this kielbasa. And we're just taking pork shoulder and some pork back fat. And what I typically like to do is take a lot of fat and a lot of pork and process it all on the same day and then just pull what I need to make sausage through the week. And it's what we got. We have two batches that are identical. 70% pork shoulder, 30% pork fat. And what we're going to do is we are just going to leave one unseasoned when we grind it and then season the other one with our spices. Now, this particular spice blend is garlic, marjoram, salt, pepper, cure. Delicious Polish sausage. Absolutely amazing. Now, we're going to chill both of these because I want them to roughly about 32, 33 F before we grind them. And let's go ahead and get the first one underway. Our first sample is going to be unseasoned meat and fat. Nice and chilled, partially frozen. Let's go ahead and get this into our grinder. We're using a number 12 Sausage Maker Pro Series grinder. A small upgrade from the one we were using last year. I like this one a lot better. And notice I'm letting the meat just flow into the grinder head. I'm not plunging it down. And we've got a nice pebbly grind. This is absolutely perfect. Let's go ahead and mix it up. We're going to add our spices, our binder, and our water. Now, I wanted to make this just a very typical recipe, nothing special. So spices in. Let's go ahead and turn this on a number 1. Turn the timer on. I want to see how long it takes to get to protein extraction. And go ahead and add 10% water. And let it go. This is going to be a very interesting experiment. Can't wait to see what happens. Okay, looks like we're at proper protein extraction. Roughly 2.5 minutes. A little under 2.5 minutes. And as I give this just a quick squeeze, I can tell you right now, this is absolutely beautiful. Nice and sticky. Perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and stuff it into our sausage stuffer. And notice, we got a little baby sausage stuffer. Perfect for these small batches. Absolutely brilliant if you're just getting started into sausage making. Check the link for the 5-pound sausage stuffer. Prick out any air pockets, and this first sample is now done. We're going to let this rest in the refrigerator overnight. Let's get the second sample that we prepared. This is now partially frozen, but it's been seasoned. And so we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to go ahead and pop this into our grinder and turn it on and see how it looks. Now, right out of the chute, what does it look like? Is it going to be any different? Let's see here. I'm loving it. Nice and pebbly. Now, remember, the meat was partially frozen, but we've got a really nice grind here. It is a little bit stickier right here, but it came out of the grinder really nice and loose. No problem there. Let's go ahead and mix it up. And for this batch, because we already seasoned it, we're just going to add a little potato starch at a rate of 2%. Turn it on, start the timer, and then add our 10% moisture liquid. And we're going to give this a mix. Now, I do find this interesting. You start to see the specks of meat on the wall of the mixer, and that's letting you know at 1 minute and 30 seconds, we've got proper protein extraction. Some mixes are a little stickier than others, but I can tell you right now, when I grab this one is absolutely perfect. You don't want to overmix your sausage when you're making sausage. You can easily break the batter, but check this out. As soon as it sticks to the hand, you are good to go. Let's go ahead and stick this into our 5-pound sausage stuffer. We're in the middle of filming Celebrate Sausage right now, and this little 5-pound stuffer is brilliant when it comes to making small batches. Thumbs up if you're ready for Celebrate Sausage Season 4. We got a great lineup for you guys. All right, let's go ahead and get this thing stuffed up. We're using just a regular hog casing that's been soaked overnight, and nothing special about this particular step. prick out any air pockets, and we're going to go ahead and let that rest in the fridge overnight as well. And you know what? Let me do one more test while those rest in the fridge overnight. We're going to take a third batch of 70-30 pork to fat ratio, and we're going to add all of our spices, including the binder, the potato starch, and the water. So we're going to go ahead and mix the water right in there. That's 10% water. And give it a little mix. And we're going to add that to our meat, and we're going to let that rest in the refrigerator overnight just to see what happens. I've technically never done this particular method before, so I'm kind of curious myself. We're going to put this into a bowl, including any excess juice or spices that might be in that tray. And we're just going to give it a cover and place that into the refrigerator overnight. Now, it's the next day, and this is what it looks like coming out of the fridge. Meat looks great. It's absorbed all the liquid, so we don't have any liquid remaining in the bowl, which is what I was expecting. And what we're going to do now is we are literally going to take this and pop it back in the freezer, because I want to re-chill it before we grind it. 32 to 34 Fahrenheit when we grind every time, and you're never going to have a problem. Let's get it in the grinder and see what happens with the meat when it's allowed to rest in those spices overnight. And I do notice that the meat is nice and pink coming out of that grinder head. Looks great. It is coming out a little bit slower, and it looks like a little bit stickier. But it's still coming out really smooth, really nice. Fairly pebbly. It does feel like there is some tackiness to it. Definitely a little bit tackier than the other two grinds. If I grab a tiny little handful, it does feel like it wants to stick to my hand. Check this out. But it's not quite there. All right, so it's definitely stickier than the other batches, but it still needs a little mixing to get it to where we want it. So into the mixer it goes. We're just using a KitchenAid stand mixer for consistency. We're going to turn it to level 1. We don't need to add anything because it already has the cure, the water, everything. And here we go. We've got what looks like decent protein extraction very quickly. This only took less than a minute, 57 seconds, 58 seconds. And let's just grab it and see how it feels. Make sure that we are indeed where we need to be. And I can tell you right now, this is absolutely perfect. I mean, the texture of this right now feels like the texture of the finished products on the first two batches. Sticks to the hand beautifully. Let's go ahead and get this into the stuffer. And being that this rested in the refrigerator overnight, the cure has already had a chance to do his job. So we could take this and go ahead and place it into the smoker with the other two batches, which is what we've already done. So into the smoker it goes. We're using a smoke in its smoker because this is the easiest way to precisely control how these are cooked. We've got the batch that was marinated overnight in the fridge. In the middle, we've got the batch that was seasoned before grinding. And then at the very back, we've got the batch that was seasoned after grinding. And so we're going to let that dry down for a minute. And it's been roughly about an hour and a half. You can see now the casings are nice and dry. If you touch them, you shouldn't feel any humidity or moisture on the casing. That's exactly what we're looking for. And now we can start to apply smoke, increase the temperature, and then gradually go through our cooking cycle. We're going to be using a cold smoke generator from Smokin' It called Bella's. This is going to allow us to apply smoke a lot sooner, give us that beautiful smoky Polish kielbasa flavor. And let's go ahead and shut it down. Now let me show you the schedule that we're going to be using to cook these kielbasa. And it starts with this. The first step, which was our drying phase, that's now completed, 90 Fahrenheit for an hour and a half. It's bumped up to 125 for 2 hours, and that's where we're at now. Step number 3, we're going to increase the temp to 150 for 3 hours, and then we're going to finish off at 185 till we get to an internal of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's where we're at right now. These look absolutely amazing. We're just going to give them a quick cool down, a quick bloom, and then we'll take a peek at what they look like and reheat them. And so this is what our finished sausages look like. Absolutely brilliant looking color, amazing aroma coming from these sausages. They look like they cooked perfectly. Let's see if there's any flavor or texture difference when we slice them open and give them a taste. All right, folks, this is it, the moment of truth. What do you think is going to happen? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. We're going to do a cold slice on these sausages right quick. Look at that. That just looks brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Texture, marbling. Okay, this sausage right here, this one was seasoned after we ground it. Notice I labeled them right there. Looks about the same. Nice looking texture. And this one right here was seasoned overnight. And let's take a little peek and see what it looks like at this stage. Okay, so far so good. To me, they look exactly the same.
I think the real test is going to come down to how they taste and perhaps the texture they deliver. So let's go ahead and just pop these into an oven. I'm going to reheat these at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes. And there we go. We got back to an internal of about 145, 150. And let's go ahead and give them a different slice now that they're cooked and see what it looks like. This is sample number 1, seasoned before grinding, very, very juicy. Sample number 2, seasoned after grinding, same texture, very juicy. All right, sample number 3. This was seasoned the night before and then ground the following day. Very juicy as well. And now it comes down to the flavor. Which one will prevail?
All right, time to get to the bottom of this mystery. When should you season your meat? We're about to find out as we taste each one of these samples and make the comparison against flavor. You know, how do they stack up against each other? And then, of course, against texture. So this first sample was seasoned before we ground it. All right, let's see how it tastes. That's a good sausage. Okay. That is a rock solid Polish kielbasa. That is everything you would expect out of a properly made sausage. Well bound together, incredibly juicy, beautifully flavored. That's delicious. Let's now try sample number 2. Now, sample number 2 was seasoned after we ground it. See if there's a big flavor difference. Wow, that's hard to tell. Let me grab sample number 1. Okay. All right, I'm going to say my opinion until we try sample number 3. Let's try sample number 3. Now, this particular sample, the meat was seasoned, and then it was placed in the refrigerator overnight and ground the next day. Let's see how this one tastes. Wow. Okay. That's incredible. All 3 of these sausages have no discernible flavor difference whatsoever. They literally taste the exact same. All right, so if flavor isn't impacted by when you add spices to the meat, at least not by any quantifiable difference, let's talk about texture, because when it comes to texture, I did find something relatively interesting with this experiment. The sausage that we seasoned first, placed in the refrigerator overnight, and then ground the next morning, came together with the proper protein extraction in only 60 seconds, while the sausage that was seasoned after it was ground and then mixed came together with the proper protein extraction in about
2 minutes and 26 seconds.
Now, times may vary depending on what you're making, but what we see here is salt at work. Salt is pulling the salt-soluble proteins from the meat, whether it's myosin or actin. And those salt-soluble proteins are what help form a glue-like matrix in your sausage meat. This is what gives you the characteristic sausage bind, that smooth, bouncy mouthfeel that everybody loves. If you don't mix it enough, you're going to end up with a crumbly sausage that doesn't hold well together. It's interesting because I got a comment here recently on one of our videos that said protein extraction is the bane of my existence. And I got a chuckle out of that because when I first started making sausage, mixing the meat was a very challenging step for me. And I felt like I never could get it right. I either didn't have enough protein extraction or I would overmix it to the point where my sausage batter would break. And so while we were still able to achieve proper protein extraction, and all 3 of these samples had the exact same texture, although one took a little bit longer than the other to get to that same level. It is important to know, and it's one thing that I hope that you could pull from this video, that when you add spices to your meat, especially salt, you are affecting the rate at which the protein is extracted from the meat. So if you are someone who is having a difficult time achieving a good bind on your sausage or your salami, if you feel like protein extraction is the bane of your existence, then it might benefit you to season your meat either before you grind, or even better yet, season the meat and then place it in the refrigerator overnight. And by the time you grind, you're going to notice that that meat is going to come out of that grinder just a little bit stickier than it normally does. Once you do that, you will see that your meat will come together pretty quick. Now, that does bring me to an interesting point, because we need to talk about grinders. One particular point of contention that some people have when it comes to pre-seasoning their meat before grinding is the taxing effect that it had on their grinder. In this particular experiment, the 2 times that we ground our meat that were seasoned,
The one on the left that was spiced before grinding came out like normal, and the one on the right, where we placed it in the fridge overnight, came out just a little bit stickier, but neither one of them gave us a problem. Now,
we chill our meat to just above frozen every time we grind meat. I'm talking 32, 33 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's what I would recommend to anyone making sausage. The grinders that we use are Sausage Maker Pro Line Series, and if you want information on those grinders, I'll put a link in the description box below. Matter of fact, I think they're having a sale on them this week. Anyway, we're using good grinders with a good strong motor, and in my opinion, the 2 samples that were seasoned prior to grinding had absolutely no problem going through the grinder. They didn't gum up the grinder, they didn't lock up the grinder. It was just like a regular grind. Now, with that being said, I can see where if you try to overstuff your grinder and you're smashing it down with the plunger, I can see where that might get a little sticky. And I could also see if you're trying to grind meat that's not partially frozen, maybe in the high 30s to low 40s, I could see where that could probably get a little sticky. Okay, so based off of my experience, under the parameters that we were working with today, I would say none of the grinds gave me a problem. When we finished the grind, the hopper was clean, there wasn't a big mess, it really wasn't that big a deal, and I think that's really attributed to having your meat partially frozen, especially if you're going to spice it before you grind. And there you go, folks. My thoughts on this particular matter is that it does not matter when you spice your meat. Spice it before you grind it, spice it after you grind it, or even spice the meat and let it sit in your refrigerator overnight if you have the space. That's actually going to give you the best protein extraction. But at the end of the day, no matter how you do it, you can still end up with an absolutely amazing quality sausage using the right techniques. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions on this particular issue, or if you have a particular way of doing it, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section below. If you got something out of this video, give it a great big thumbs up. And if you like this Beyond the Recipe series where we take you past the sausage making recipe so you can become a better sausage maker, be sure to click that subscribe button and that notification bell. Thanks a lot for being here. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.